Okay, it's going.
So, okay, I guess we'll start. That's the thing that says on the screen. History of transgender representation in video games.
That's a Chris call past one on my thing. Anyway,
Yeah, content violence and stuff. I'm going to be talking about like sex and stuff, and there's going to be phobophobia and a lot of transphobia. And I'm going to talk about dragging into additional ones. That's probably the worst part, but let's get into it, I guess. So I'm trans, if you haven't figured it out. I've been out for about 4.5 years now, and I probably think about being trans at least once a day. So I don't know how to talk about this stuff with non-trans people, because I feel like you don't think about this as much as I do. Also, I don't actually know if any of you are trans or not. Maybe you are. I don't know. Yeah, just so we're on the same page. Here are some words I'm going to be using. Just read through them, I guess. And make sure you know what they mean, because it might get confusing later if you're just like, what the fuck is gender dysphoria? It's the whole thing. So, I'm kind of talking about the history of representations in this, but like I also want to talk about like what is good representation and what's bad representation, and what does it mean when I say that like a certain character is good representation, but this representation is bad. Well, it's kind of difficult to say. There isn't really a hard and fast definition of like this is good representation, and what might be good representation in one case could be bad in another. It's kind of hard to explain. The best definition that I can come up with is a good representation of a trans character is when they're allowed to be a character before they're trans. So like they're not just a one-line description of this character is trans and nothing else. That's bad representation. But when that's what that means is explored, and yeah, that's good representation. So part one, the dark times, which is just everything pre-2014. We'll explain why I think 2014. So, to explain the format of how this is going to go out, or might play out, initially I thought I'd just like, it's the history, I'm just going to make a timeline, I'm just going to show you all the points on the timeline. But it didn't feel useful, I guess. As I started laying out all the characters that I had picked out, it became obvious there were patterns between the different characters and like how they're presented. And I figured, well, if those patterns exist, it makes sense that I should be focusing on what those patterns mean and why they exist. So I laid them all out, and I came up with 4 archetypes of trans representation that existed in this era of video games. Archetypes, trans representation in this era of games. There are punchlines. There's open transphobia. There's weird stuff. There was a lot of that, honestly. And then there was the one good one. That's right. This covers about 30 years of games, and I found one character that wasn't at least one character that's actually good, I guess. So look forward to that one. So I'm going to start with punchlines. A punchline character to me is any character that's described as being trans just because the developers thought somebody being trans is inherently funny. So the best example I can find was Birdo from Doki Doki Panic or Super Mario Bros. 2. For those who don't know, Birdo, in the manual for the game, there's one line that says that he's actually, in their words, he's actually a boy who thinks he's a girl, which is not the terminology that we love, but it's what they said. They also say that she would prefer to be named Verdetta, but they haven't referred to her as that in the writers. They were clearly just like, oh, that's kind of funny. Let's put that in. And there's no depth there. And like, that sucks. So like, have your identity used as a punchline, but like, at the end of the day, it's mostly harmless. It's like an immature joke. They've never been interested in giving it more depth than that, as photos have been like Mario Kart and shit like that. It's never been more up yet. It was a point. And like, I guess kind of would expect this, like no one's expecting a Mario game to give us like benchmarks of representation, but it's still a cool thing. Oh, it's a cool thing, I guess, but it's still a thing that she was presented as trans back in the 80s. There's also, so whereas Birdo is a relatively harmless example of a punchline, there's also stuff like Shaggy from Legends of Barry 6. How many people actually know what Legends of Barry is?
Yeah.
Like 3 people? Brilliant. I'm sorry for introducing Legends of Barry to you. It was a series of games released mostly in the 90s, where you play as a guy who's trying to have sex with as many women as possible. That's the game. And one of those women, in one of those games, was trans. And I'm going to be real with you, it wasn't very good. This was not a kind representation of a trans person. She is often depicted as overly manly and predatory at times. And she's generally she's presented as a man trying to trick other men into having sex with them. It's not coming from a place of kindness or a place of interest in what it means to be trans. It's just, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we had someone like this in the game? Which sucks. But it's not the worst example I can find. That is in the open transphobia. The character that stuck out the most in me as being really crap was this Rennie Dusselmeyer from Grand Theft Auto. I can read. And like, honestly, I could spend half of this presentation being like, here's another time that Grand Theft Auto was transphobic, because turns out, not a very mature series, not a very kind series. Yeah. To sum up this character, she's presented as a woman in the game, but we get told that she has had 4 sex changes. Woman to man to woman to man to woman again. And yeah, it presents her transness as a joke, and it's kind of something that is inherently comical. So it kind of falls into the same category of punchlines, but it just feels like it's coming from a more mean-spirited place. There's a recurring theme that will appear throughout the representation of trans people, that people really love to depict us as sex workers. She is said to have history as a sex worker and as a porn star. There is an interest to this day of connecting trans people to sex inherently, and also depicting men who have sex with trans women as lesser in some way, or less masculine. And yeah, this is an example of that. And that sucks. It reduces us to less than people with human sex objects, and that sucks. But that's not the only way that transgender can through. So, Final Fight is a beat-em-up from the late 80s. They've been through over the years. In the original Final Fight, all of the enemies were men, but there were 2 women in the game that were enemies, Poison and Roxy. And it is explained in the manual that they're actually, again, in their words, men who dress up as women. The reason that they were made into that was the developers wanted you to be able to beat up women, but they didn't want to feel bad about beating up women. So just extra misogyny in there as well. So they didn't want you to beat up real women, trans women were good enough for them in their mind. And yeah, this is another form that transphobia makes it just like treating us still as our birth genders and like just kind of degrading us. The third, like, most egregious case I could find was some Goldfish Quest second season. There is in there was a cross-dressing killer. Yeah, again, it hits a lot of the same beats. Treated as a sex object, treated as mentally ill, shown to be dangerous for people. If you're wondering what this flash rectangle is, it's a censor bar, because it's fucking gruesome. So that's fun. But that's all the open transphobia. It's onto the fun stuff now. The weird stuff is kind of a catch-all category that I set up. There was a lot of stuff that wasn't explicitly transphobic, and honestly isn't even explicitly a trans character, but there's clearly some stuff happening with gender with these characters. I'm not really sure how to lump them together in understanding. This shit's fucking weird, and I want to show you the weird stuff. Characters like Flea from Chrono Trigger, I have to put my notes about. She's, I don't know what pronouns to use. Let's say they. They spin onto the screen, is referred to a woman by the player characters, but then insists he's a guy, saying this quote, male, female, what's the difference? Power is beautiful, and I've got the power. It's a beautiful phrase, I think. I say that to myself every morning since I read it for the first time. It's incredible. Yeah. There's not much to say about Flea. They're like a one-time character, they're a boss fight. There's not much depth to them beyond just like, they don't like gender, which, I mean, I get it, but like, it's a very interesting decision to have this tiny bit character and be like, yeah, and also, there's just going to be a bit upbeat with gender. And like, this happened a lot in JRPGs. There were like a lot of JRPG characters that are just like, don't really do a huge amount. Like, these are all Final Fantasy characters. There's Scarus from Final Fantasy V, Adol from Final Fantasy VIII, and Queen of Gwen from Final Fantasy IX, and all of them just have something in their backstory which is just like, they're not a man, but they're also not a woman, and I just think that non-binary gender identities are contentious and kind of existed in various forms going back millennia. So I think it's interesting at this time when there wasn't really much cultural discussion of like non-binary people, we were still putting people who existed outside of gender binary in our stories, which is fascinating to me. Because like, even without knowing like non-binary, like even with non-binary people not being in the spotlight, we still just felt a natural urge to put, you know, non-binary characters in our games. Like, I don't know, it's fascinating. I don't really know what it means, but you know, it's interesting. Also, a lot of these characters are from Japan. I don't know what's up with that. They were weird about gender in the 90s for some reason. There's also characters like Naoko Shirogane from Persona 4. Her whole thing is that, like, through most of the game, she's trying to pass as a man and trying to, boy, I guess she's but like, she keeps insisting that she's a boy and that she's dressed masculinely and she wants to be a boy, but then, later in the story, there's a moment where, because of some magic bullshit, she's given the opportunity to have a male body, and like, refuses that and says, actually, I'm going to go back to living as a woman, which is kind of, it feels like trans representation. Female body frankly is attached to a man, but it pulls back at the last moment and says, actually, no, this isn't a transgender person. And yeah, it's weird stuff. I don't know what it means, but it's fascinating that it exists. The final example I wanted to give was Bridget from Guilty Gear. If you played the latest Guilty Gear, we're coming back to her. But for her original depiction, we are told that she was born a set of twin boys, then raised as a girl, and now in her adulthood is insisting that no, she's actually a boy, not a girl. Still dresses like a nun for some reason, but insisting that no, he's a boy, and that's just, again, it's kind of the same thing with Naruto, of like, it's kind of transgender representation. but it's just pulling back to the last moment, and I'm not quite sure why. I promised a good one. It's time for the good one. Does anyone know what the good one might be? You can guess. We're getting to him? No. He's post 2014. No, what's that? No, it's from 2004, from Paper Mario, 1,000 Years Old. I said a bit earlier, like you wouldn't think a Mario game would be the one. It was the one, they actually did it. So Vivian's whole story, she's introduced as a villain, part of a family of 3 people who kind of look like her. And throughout most of the game, until about halfway through, she's the victim of a lot of bullying, transphobic bullying from her family. Until about halfway through, she switches sides and joins Mario's party. The reason I think this is good representation is it shows, aspects of being transgender that are serious and deserve to be discussed, like facing transphobic behavior from family members. The game does a good job representing that transphobia in the sense that it's exclusively coming from the villains and it's exclusively shown in a bad light, which I think is important. It's, especially in an age like this where there wasn't much trans friendliness, I think it's important to have stuff like make it clear where you stand on this. Another reason, or the main reason I think this is great representation is it fits the tropes of a found family story, which is being rejected from your birth family or natural family and finding community and family in people who accept you, which is a key part of a lot of trans people and queer people generally stories. As our is actually sort of shown to become more confident and more like outgoing, which again is very true to life. I can relate to that. And yeah, her story is relatable and great. Has anyone played Paper Mario 1,000 Years Old? Literally no one? You should play this game, genuinely, it's a great game. The reason I asked is because I wanted to see if anyone would remember this story. So I didn't think you would, because it did get censored. It wasn't in the English and German versions of the game. The bullying is changed, just like, oh, you're ugly, and we're going to bully you for that. The fact that she's trans, never brought up, basically doesn't exist. Which is disappointing. Like, I played this game when I was 8 years old. I can't imagine how much of an impact a story like this on 8-year-old me would have had, but I didn't get to see it because some morality checker in America that I will never meet decided that's not appropriate. So, it's interesting. So, stories so far, we've looked at things from the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. What have we learned? Trans characters, especially not like.
Sorry, that's not even my phone. Oh, it's recording. Oh, God. The pressure. I didn't even touch it, I just looked at it.
Trans characters are rare. They don't do very many games. I don't think there's a single AAA game that we've covered that has had a prominent trans character. I mean, like Final Fantasy 1, which even then isn't explicit trans characters. When it does happen, it's usually not very kind to trans people. We're off the punchline. Most of the characters that are discussed can be someone because they're trans, and maybe you like them, and then that's it. That's the extent of their character. Which, you'll remember I said at the beginning, what makes good representation? This is the key to bad representation in my mind. Also, basically every example I've given is either a trans woman or a non-binary person. The only 2 cases of me being a trans man was GTA 1, which like it's all a girl and transition, but then that's the whole thing. Not great. And then there's the Persona 1, which pulls back at the last moment. So trans men aren't really given much focus. Things are going to get better though. So in the early 2010s, we did start to see a change in perspective. At the very least, people weren't being as openly transphobic, except for Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto was still doing it. So everyone else became kind of it was slow, but we started to see characters, trans characters, if they existed, weren't just a bunch of jokes. Although generally I would say they stopped existing much. Like, there started to be a slowdown in the presence of trans characters at all, as it went from, yes, this is okay to make fun of, to, we're not sure if this is okay to make fun of, to, this is not okay to make fun of. There was that transition area where people just weren't comfortable putting this in their games. There is one franchise that there are 3 releases, 2009, 2011, and 2014, that you can track the growth in sensitivity on this subject as the franchise progresses. Each of the 3 games had a trans character. And as mentioned earlier, it's Dragon Age. I warned that I was going to gush about Dragon Age Inquisition at some point. This is that one. So, Dragon Age Origins. Who's played Dragon Age Origins? A lot of you. Do any of you remember the trans characters in this game? Didn't think so. It is a group of nameless trans sex workers. Which, when that's the fucking title of the section, you know you're not into anything like this. Sorry?
It's the elves.
They are.
Yeah. So that's too much for my
It's okay. Yeah. This is all we got. There's no depth, there's nothing to discuss here. It's the old joke of trans people being sex workers. It's not really anything for me to discuss. I'm just like, man, this fucking sucks. Yeah, especially for a game that, Liliana and Zevran are 2 great bisexual characters that, to this day, I think are great examples of queer love in video games. So the fact that there was this sensitivity towards queer people and queer existence, and this is what we got, fucking sucks. And people told them that it, sucks. So, Dragon Age 2 was a bit better. They don't remember this character from Dragon Age 2. Still no. I get it. Her name is Serendipity. She has a name. She is an actual character. We love that. Round of applause. Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah. She has a name. She has a personality. She is a character. That's kind of, I shouldn't be happy about that, but I kind of am. She's still a sex worker. Small progress. She presented as having a deep masculine voice, which feels, it just feels a bit shit. They're still thinking there's a manliness and masculinity. I do feel some complicated feelings towards that, because it definitely feels like it's supposed to be a punchline that says, sexy woman, but she has a manly voice. I have a manly voice, and I'm a woman. So, in a way, this represents me better than any other character that I'm going to discuss today. But it still just feels a bit weird. It's still just a bit uncomfortable. The developer section is intended to be read as a drag queen, not a trans woman. But that distinction feels difficult, especially because memory limitations kind of made her just seem like any old woman. And the only indication that she wasn't just a cis woman is her voice. So yeah, kind of not great, but she does have her fans. She returned in the DLC. People like Serendipity. But it's okay, because the second good one is coming. Cremisius Aphasi, the king himself. I'm quite a lot of confidence. I like him a lot. He's really good. So, audience participation, ask the question. Okay, you don't have to. Why did I go through the effort of learning how to make emojis on PC just to add a bunch of hearts on that screen? Well, because I love Krem, and I want you to love Krem too. He invented trans men single-handedly. There has been no trans mass representation, solid trans mass representation, until Dragon Age Inquisition. I do think that is very significant. For a long time, the public consciousness around trans people were trans women. We kind of got a lot of focus. So I think the fact that in this benchmark of trans representation, it was a trans man, shows a sensitivity on the subject. They've thought about this. This isn't just ticking a box or anything. They actually talked to trans people, I imagine. It's used to expand the universe in interesting ways. I'm going to go back to that definition I said at the start of a character being allowed to exist beyond just being trans. I think another element of that is, yeah, they're trans, but that says something. They're not the only trans person. Through conversations with Cram, we get to learn that. We get to learn about how different cultures view transness in this world, as well as learn how they view gender in general. It expands the lore a lot. This character just existing, you're just getting to talk to him. He also is allowed to have an impact on the plot. He isn't a one conversation side character that doesn't affect anything. He comes up multiple times in the main plot, especially in regards to a certain companion. As well as that, we are given time to focus on his transness. Like, I don't want a character to be defined by their transness, but I don't want their transness to not matter. We learn, like, he tells us about his experience binding. If you don't know what binding is, I'm not the person to ask about it. But anyway, he talks about trans identity, he talks about having to hide, and how it's affected his relationship with his family. It's a great character. Play Dragon Age Inquisition. If you have a spare 100 hours.
It takes like 20 hours to play correct mode.
Yeah, that's true. I've been playing Dragon Age Inquisition again lately while I've been working on this, because I was thinking about Crown. I want to see Crown again. And yeah, I just wanted to include some quotes from the game, because I think they do a really good job of explaining why I love them. At one point, he's told about trans people that exist in the Phanari, who are in the faction. And he asks, they don't treat those people any different than a real man, and he is told they are real men, which if a mentor figure said that to me, not long after I come out, I would break down crying. I think it's an amazing line, and I want to put some focus on it. Also, he's asked why he decided to stop living as a man. He didn't decide anything. This is just who he is, which, great representation, great character. Is he perfect? No. Perfect representation probably doesn't exist, but Cram definitely isn't yet. He's played by a cis woman, which kind of, it feels like it undercuts a lot of what they say. Like, they make this point of, like, he is a real man. He didn't decide to be a man. He is a man. But having him played by a cis woman just feels like it undercuts that a little bit. Like, I don't know. You're saying he's a real man, but you're not treating him like a real man. You only get to hear his backstory by having your character be transphobic. Like, you can say stuff like, it was in the quote before, what made you decide to be a man? The fact that you have to have your character say that, which, if someone said that to me, I mean, first of all, I'm not a man, but if someone said, well, why did you decide to be a woman to me, I would be offended. So having to have my character say that in order to hear, like, this great story sucks. I wish that wasn't in there. Also, I'm not allowed to date him. I'm personally offended by that. I want to buy one of the dating simulators and you don't let me date the hottest guy in the game. I'm going to be upset.
I think there's a lot.
I'm sure there's a lot. There's definitely a lot. That's it. Those are my own problems with Cram. He's a great character. He's a great piece of representation. And he's part of the reason why I set this pre-2014, post-2014 disparities. Because Cram changed things. He's a benchmark in the industry. And just to finish talking about Dragon Age for a bit, obviously it's hard to predict what the future trend representation of Dragon Age is going to be like, because I don't know what the next game is going to be. I don't know if the next game is going to come out because it's been in development hell for a while.
Like 10 years.
I think that next year is 10 years anniversary. So if this game ever comes out, it could be great. I think it's worth noting. So the game director, there have been a few game directors, like I said, development hell, it happens. But the current game director is a trans woman. So that's exciting. It's her play game headed by someone who has skin in the game, let's say. Part 3, the not as dark years. Still with a lot of improvement, but 2014 and onwards, the post-Cram era. New era, like with all the stuff I set up, like different archetypes to discuss. The new archetypes are transphobia still exists, weird stuff still exists. There are people trying to do trans representation who drop the ball and get it wrong in a variety of ways. there are trans side characters kind of in the same vein as Crown. Characters that exist in the world that are trans and it's not treated as a big deal. It might not even come up, which I have no feeling about. But anyway, there's also the fabled, incredible, actual, good, substantial representation, which I will get to. There is a happy ending. So yeah, transphobia still exists. Characters like Val in LS2, which I haven't played because I don't like horror games, it's not me. But everything I've read about her sounds awful. Sex offender, violent, mentally ill. All the worst parts of all the worst things that people say about trans women. Her, or him, I guess, from Breath of the Wild, when the biggest criticism or biggest slur that people say against trans women is that we're just men trying to invade women's spaces. Having a literal man trying to invade a woman's space in your game isn't great. I don't love it. Still a great game, but it sucks. If I had an hour, I could not unpack all the shit that happens in this game. All I know about Rin from Catherine is you find out she's trans halfway through, and the main character immediately begins insulting her and misgendering her. Also, I'm pretty sure there's a twist at the end of the game where you find out she's an alien. Weird fucking game. Don't play it. And Deadly Premonition 2. The thing I remember about Deadly Premonition 2 is when it came out, it had a bunch of criticism, called transphobia in it. And the developer released a statement saying, sorry about that, we're going to patch it out. And then they gave a patch. And they left in a bunch of the transphobia. So they were just like, no, actually, we can't remove that. That is vital to the story. So that sucks. But yeah, a lot of these are just examples of just it's the same old attitudes. It's people not getting with the times, you could say. But yeah. Most people are trying. Most people are, or if not trying, they're at least not touching the subject. Most people are trying to not be shitty to trans people. Some people are failing. For instance, in Mass Effect Andromeda, which weirdly is also made by the people who made Dragon Age Inquisition. I don't know how they went from Krem to fucking this, but they did. In the first conversation you have with her, she will tell you that she is a trans woman, which generally trans people don't come out to in the first conversation. That's not very realistic. Also, she tells you her dead name in the first conversation. If I met my soulmate tomorrow, and we lived together for 50 years, and we had a whole family and kids and grandkids, and at the end of that 50 years, they asked me what my dead name was, I would not tell them. That's none of their fucking business. So how your character tell you that in the first conversation just feels like they didn't talk to trans people. They didn't care to think about what trans people actually act like. There's also just a whole bunch of shit in Cyberpunk 2077. I kind of don't have time to get into all of it. The way it treats trans bodies is kind of inherently fetishistic. You can see this ad, which I have skillfully censored. It made a big thing about this good representation because we let you play as a man with a vagina or a woman with a penis. There is so much more to being trans than that. And having it be reduced to that is kind of just offensive. But there is good representation. It's fine. There's good representation. I'm not going to spend much time going through all of these in particular because they're kind of all the same story as Cram. Not as good, I think. I really like Cram. But they're all characters who are trans, and it comes up in their backstories. And they're allowed to just exist as trans people in the world, which I think it's nice to have benchmarks like Cram that we can point at and be like, this is a character where their transness matters, and it's part of the story, and it's great. But I think there is a lot of value in just having characters that just exist as trans people, and it doesn't have to be commented on or explained. They're just another facet of existence. Yeah, that's good. We are now getting games with actual substantial representation in them, beyond just a side character that shows up for a few scenes. Games like Celeste. So I'm going to be real with you, I haven't played Celeste. Every single trans woman that I know will not shut the fuck up about Celeste. They love this game. It's like catnip. I don't get it myself, but the character's trans and people like it, so it helps with mentioning. There are characters like Lev from Last of Us Part 2, who a large part, the second half of the game is spent trying to help him escape from a transphobic group that he was raised in. The reason I think this is great representation, and it's contentious, a lot of trans people don't like him, but personally I love him because they take the time to weave in complexities that like he was raised very religious, and the religious cult he's part of doesn't like the fact that he's trans, but he's still religious, he still believes that. And time is spent to explore that complexity, which even 10 years before this would have been unthinkable. But they did it, and they did a really good job with it. Well, they did a good job. There are games like Tell Me Why, which features a trans protagonist. The plot of the game is spent trying to understand his relationship with his dead mother and the events that surrounded her death, and what they have to do with his transness. I'm playing through this at the moment, so I haven't finished it yet, so I can't say much on it, but the first chapter of this, I think, is great trans representation. They explore what it means for him to be trans, how people respond to his transness. He has conversations with people in the game that I've had with people in real life, and I think that's amazing. And finally, I mentioned earlier the one Guilty Gear fan in the room. Loves that game. So we've started seeing all the characters be reinterpreted through the more modern lens. Bridget, I mentioned earlier, born as a set of twin boys, raised as a girl, but then insisted on being a boy. In Guilty Gear Strive, her plot is figuring out who she is, separate from other people's expectations, and deciding for herself who she wants to be, and the story ends with her coming out as a trans woman. And as much as I just there's not a lot of stories being told that are coming out stories for trans people. So having a story based around this character coming out and coming to terms with themselves, I think is amazing. I'm not going to play Guilty Gear because I don't like fighting games, but it exists and that's awesome. So I've set up this dichotomy of pre-2014 and post-2014, and I want to explore that a little bit. We're very nearly done. I know I've rambled a lot. Because it wasn't just Prem. There was a lot that happened in 2014 specifically that feels like the benchmark of pre and post. The second season of Origins New Black came out, TV show that prominently features a trans woman. And as a result, Time magazine put out an article called Transgender Tipping Point, describing what they saw as a change in attitudes towards trans people. The same thing that I'm describing, that's just a different area of life, I guess, in television. On top of that, in music, the punk band that Gainspeed put out Transgender Dysphoria Blues, a great album exploring transness. And it just feels like there's much more trans art being created and exploration of what it means to be trans in 2014 than there ever was before. And I think that really contributed to changing that. Also, gay marriage was legalized in the UK.
Is that in 2014?
Yeah. Coming up on 13 years. Yeah. I think a lot of the change in attitude towards trans people has come about as a result of the change in attitude towards gay people. If you go back to the 80s and 90s, gay people were very easy to criticize. It was very easy and common to criticize them or make fun of them or joke about them. And then kind of saw less of that in the 2000s and became more of a grey area. And now gay people are just accepted as it's a good thing to be nice to gay people. We all agree. Well, I hope we all agree on that now. And I think that's kind of the same change that I noticed in we saw less trans characters late 2000s, early 2010s. I think that was the start of the same transition. So I think the fact that these instances of trans art being created in 2014 lining up with that, I think is significant. Conclusion. Why did I just talk about any of this? Because I told Shanice I'd do one of these, and I couldn't think of the topic. So, there you go. I'm not done. Wait.
Oh.
Also, this being transgender is fucking great. It's the only reason I'm still alive, and yeah, it's good to get representation. Good representation helps members of my community. It helps them feel less alone, helps them connect to what it means to be trans. And when the only trans representation they're getting is fucking Birdo, that sucks. So, yeah, I want more characters like Cram and Lad and they help people like me, and I want to help people like me. It helps you all, assuming you all are all cis. I don't actually know for sure. But I think there's value in people knowing what it means to be trans, and I think representation helps with that. Also, I don't think any artist benefits from limiting themselves on what kind of stories they can tell. If we can tell a story about trans people, that's more stories than we can tell, and that helps art in general. And I also think it's worth spending time exploring the difference between good representation and bad representation, because bad representation hurts in the same way that good representation helps. And, yeah. Now I'm done. Stuff in general. If you want to.
I was going to say, pretty good, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. I learned some stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I thought this would be crap. So the last lunch and learn had like games and stuff and like more organization, so it's very self-confident. I was going to be 4 people in the top.
This made me feel so good. I'm not trans, but I got misgendered yesterday.
Oh, shit.
And it made me feel so sad.
You have experienced gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
Like what that is.
So I get misgendered, since I moved to the UK, I get misgendered like at least once a month. Which is like very random.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Join the club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never fun getting misgendered.
No.
Don't assume ask.
Thank you. Saying it. Anyway.
I've got a question. What is your favourite representation or example of a trans person in new media? Not just in music.
I think it's still going to be Vivian from Super Mario. Like, I loved that character before I figured out I was trans, before I knew the trans aspects, the essential obviously. But like, I just think, I love that character. I loved her before I knew she was trans. I love her even more now. I think that's a great character. And seriously, you should play Paper Mario 1000 Year Door. It is so fucking good. That's what my next lunch and learn is going to be about. This is why this is the best fucking game ever, and you should all play it.
Pretty good, isn't it?
Just like there's a lot of Western background games from Japan and a lot of this interesting like representation of one or the other. I think that speaks a lot of like their history. So like the Edo period in particular, or like the mid 1800s, they were very like you could dress however you wanted, and you could be referred to whatever like what you wanted to refer to. So good thing for pronouns. I did a course on that in history. At uni, it was really interesting. So like definitely like if you were interested in that, if anyone was like it's really worth it.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Gabriel, you got anything more?